Hey guys, J77 here doing another flashback review, and this review is the Godfather um, drama made for television, or if you was in the 90s, the Godfather Saga. Now, what is the difference between this one? Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is pretty much a short review for that matter, of Godfather 1 and 2. Now, while I'm doing Godfather 1 and 2 again, especially when I already covered it in my previous flashback reviews, the reason for this is as followed. One, this was a retelling of a story that pretty much went in chronological order. I mean, meaning that they took some elements from each film, rearranged it, re-edited it, and placed it on television as a 3-day event. It was on, and it had one of the best, highest ratings of this era when it came out in the 70s, the late 70s. They actually, instead of going with Godfather Part 1, they went with Godfather Part 2, flashbacks. They took the flashback of the Godfather Part 2, re-edited it, added some new features, and what we have was pretty much a brand new 2-hour plus movie. And within the additional features of the Godfather, of that Godfather Part 2 flashbacks, you actually got a more broader details of how Vito Corleone had rose to power. You also get a broad detail of how despicable the original Don that he had killed was, to the point where they were actually trying to kill him before Vito actually got the job done. And it showed it in broad details, still in subtitles, but it gave us a more clearer picture of Vito Corleone, his upbringing, as well as his family, his friends that became loyal to him, and why people respected him and feared him at the same time. I really liked it the way this was done. I actually eliminated any confusion I had when I watched The Godfather Part 2, because one of the major problems I had with Godfather Part 2 was I didn't understand what the hell was going on, because I really came into there not knowing it was going to do flashbacks of Vito's life, as well as showing how Michael was still rising to power, still was at his peak of his power, and was playing a chess game with all his enemies, starting with who was the traitor in his family. This one, pretty much without Michael's story yet, pretty much focused just on Vito's rise to power, and they done a very great job. I mean, the footage that they had for those flashbacks, it's amazing. I mean, there was so much footage. I was surprised they didn't try to make that into just its own movie. Just basically tell that story and then tell the Godfather with Michael, and how he handled power. But unfortunately, I guess they didn't have enough time at that particular moment, and they just wanted to tell two tales in one, just and get it over with. But in any case, it definitely brought a broader, better picture than I ever anticipated. We then moved forward to The Godfather, the original story, and they added even more features there. They added a lot of features there, which made a lot more sense, because there was a lot of gaps there. You don't notice it. Now that you see this, you really know there's a lot of questions that was definitely answered. One of the particular questions were, who was the first person, who was the original person before his stepson took over as second in command? And in that scene, after the party, they went to the hospital. He was dying. He was on his deathbed, and before he died, Vito, who is now played by Marlon Brando, was speaking to Michael, who came with his uniform, and this scene is very, very powerful, because he sees the medals, and he still has that feeling that he shouldn't have went to war, because he's helping strangers he don't know. It was kind of like a tense, but not to the point where they're screaming and yelling. He just wants to be close to his son. And you actually can tell that he really do love his son, and he was proud of him deep down. But he just wanted to be close to the family, which Michael at that time refused. You see the character who was dying, and he actually made a request, a very deep request, that he wanted him to die, because he wanted him to kill him, and he tried to do that by having a rule that he can't turn down a request in a family's wedding, particularly his daughter's wedding. But Vito didn't do it. Vito would not do it. He said he can't do it, and even though he's trying to, even though his friend and person who was second in command, basically said he had the power like God. He basically said no, I'm not going to do that. But I will. But he stood with him. It showed a lot in that scene. It really, really did. I mean, that one scene that I just described showed a whole lot. And for some reason, they choose to take that out. Not to say it was missed, because I think they did a good job of not mentioning him. They did edit a piece out when they was talking about the about him going to about his stepson going to Hollywood to take care of business for Fontaine, who was his godson, and has got into a lot of trouble because Bruce was keeping him out. There was a scene there that pretty much would have explained a lot of stuff, but they cut that out and just cut down that scene entirely. Another scene was an additional scene where, when they had the controversial severed horse inside the producer's bed, but there was another scene there afterward where he actually came home and sent Luca Borowski to deal with the situation. So we knew who it was who actually cut the guy's head. We just now had it in more broad detail. That scene, I didn't mind them taking out because it really was an unnecessary scene, and only thing it really showed in that scene is we knew that the guy was a bit of a pervert, the producer, because he had a young mistress with him. We also knew pretty much, and when I mean pervert, I mean the person was young. I mean extremely young. She didn't even look like she was in her 20s yet. So that's what I mean by that. And then we've seen a scene how already the newlyweds are already having fights in the house, and you can tell Sonny right away doesn't like that. But Vito has said, don't interfere. You know better not to interfere with family or with other people's business. Let them deal with that, and that's how that got resolved. So they really didn't. It wasn't really necessary. So I didn't have a problem with that. The one scene I wish they kept on there, because that was an important scene. It was a very important scene. Was the scene before Vito got shot, before the Don got shot, because this scene showed a whole lot of details within the scene. And the scene was, it started out with Michael going away. His stepbrother got in contact with him. He told him that, tell him I called, but don't tell him where I'm at. And of course, that pretty much resolved that. He agreed with that. After Vito got shot up and everybody don't know what's going on, there's a scene that was removed completely. It was a scene where Sonny was sitting down. He gets a phone call from a cop. It was a corrupt cop, and let him know, your father got shot up. We don't know if he's alive or dead yet. But stay on the phone, stay on the line, so that way we can tell you what's going on. And in this situation, in that scene, he's talking to his wife. He goes to his mother and immediately tells her what's going on. And for some god earthly reason, she didn't respond as I expected. I thought she was going to be crying or be hysterical, trying to get her stuff. It's almost like she had went through this before. In fact, I'm not surprised if she had went through this before, because she knew who he was way before, and that was pretty much explained in the flashbacks. But in this one, she was more calm. She was more collective. You would think there would be some kind of a major emotion, but it really was like, okay, this is business. I know what I got myself into. Let me get my coat. So I find it kind of odd. It really caught me by surprise, especially when Sonny died. Vito was sitting down with his stepson and said, my wife is crying hysterically up the stairs, and nobody wants to tell me anything. You might tell me what it is that you need to know. So I pretty much, without being said, I can only imagine the heartbreak she was going through. But in this, it just felt cold. I don't know what it was about that scene. And I'm not too sure if that was the reason why they took it off, but it really was weird. Of course, in the end, we also find out more stuff. We found out that that the guy who was supposed to be the bodyguard was involved, and they showed that really, really early that he wants him dead. He wants him gone. It wasn't. They didn't know he was gonna ask who should we take out first, and it was like asking for like one of the guys who Michael, because Michael came to the house and sat down and settled down. He told him that it can't be him, and then it went to the scenes that we pretty much know. There was also, I believe, some additional footage in the end where Neri got introduced real early. The step brother was not happy about it. He knew he was being pushed out, and that was when after Michael took, took the reign of the Godfather, and he was not happy about it. He was not pretty much thrilled about it. And there was additional footage there. There was additional footage, I believe, with how the situation going down when Michael went went in hiding to exile. They showed some additional footage there. They showed additional footage with him with his father talking and also going in the garden. But there were very small, minute footage. Easily could have been taken out, but they added it in. But most importantly, they showed a lot. It basically showed more depth and more explanation when they needed to show more explanation. Because there were some scenes that I did question at one point, but it wasn't that big of a deal. They actually fixed that very, very quick and very, very with class. Third day, which I'm saying third day because this was the conclusion, we got the conclusion, which is Godfather Part 2, which is minus the flashbacks. Now, I was curious on how they was going to do this one, because you don't have the flashbacks to lean on. I don't know how much, minus the editing, was gone. If you put the flashbacks in along with the Godfather's current timeline, it runs about 3 hours. There has to have been a lot of editing, because when I saw it, it was 2 hours and plus. It didn't really felt like I was missing anything with the flashbacks. We had a scene which I actually glad they shown, because in the scene, if you go back to the first one, his first wife got murdered. They thought they was getting him. They ended up getting him. They ended up getting his wife instead. He vowed revenge, and I believe they said like 8-10 years. He actually found the guy, working a pizzeria, and he killed him the same way he had killed his wife, which was kind of interesting because he didn't see it coming. I'd always questioned, did they actually deliver pizza at 1 o'clock in the morning? But I just left it alone. There were also additional footage there where Neri, you actually seen why Neri was picked to be the second in charge, because when he came to certain clubs, he just basically took over, and he told him, "You work for Michael now." So he basically was running circles. They actually did a re-editing, or when I say rearranging, where they actually took a scene that was originally before the shooting, when they shot up the house, when he was meeting his son, he was talking to his son. They actually put that before the house got shot up, and in his place you see Michael and his family in the guest room or the living room, waiting for them until they do their search. You see additional footage of Cuba. You see additional footage of the trial. You see additional footage of the ending. And pretty much, with the exception of probably a few editings, which I noticed, especially with the nudity scene with all three of them, because they definitely cut some of the violence that was graphic out, but not to an extent. You still seen it, but they was like that. It was very quick. It pretty much was, the third one especially, the third part of this was fulfilling, and it's pretty much brought a closure, which I kind of respect more than when I watched the movie with the flashbacks. That's just my opinion. Of course, I know you guys may have a different feel on that. This TV special I loved. I really, really loved this TV special. It did, the editing. A lot of people said, that I felt about the editing. I felt the editing was well done. They did sanitize some of the main violence, but you kind of expect it because it's still on TV, and the FCC was going crazy at that time, where a lot of shows was trying to push the limits, and they was trying to tame it down. But they have done it to the point where even when it was sanitized, it didn't take anything away from the story, and that was important. Each part felt complete. It felt like a complete series when you did it. It gave us, the additional footage gave us more information about the story that we never really got before, and it really felt like a complete edition, with the exception of the third, because I'm not counting the third as part of this one, and I'll explain when I get to the movie in a bit. But in this one, it really, really felt they actually completed the whole story. If they would have just ended like that, I would have been happy with it. I have nothing really bad to say about it. Nothing really negative just to say about it. It really felt complete. I read the record book for the Nielsen ratings. The third part had the most highest rated watch on television. That's an accomplishment on its own. And at one time, and this is probably my fault because this wasn't arrogance and my fault because I really didn't do my research when I watched this show. I thought this was Francis Ford Coppola doing it, saying I wanted to tell the story this way. Unfortunately, that's not true. It may have been true in the sense that this is how he wanted to rearrange it, but it's not really true that this is the only reason. The reason why he did this as a 3-day event was because he was working on a movie, Apocalypse Now, and he went over budget. And the only way, and as a deal to get funding for this movie, because he really wanted to finish this movie, is that he made a deal with the television networks to do The Godfather, but in this form. So he had an editor, he re-edited everything, they added the footage in, they cleaned up the most violent scenes that will give the FCCs the most headaches, and they presented in this form. And I really got to be honest with you, it's a blessing in disguise because this is how I envisioned the way Godfather should have been. Tell the flashbacks. Tell us how he rises and falls and how his family took over the reign. And see how Michael Corleone did in his reign. And it really felt complete. And when I tell you right now, when I watched the films, just the regular theatrical version, I felt cheated when I watched the regular theatrical version. That's the only disadvantage I think I can actually say. I really did felt cheated when I saw the theatrical version again, but nevertheless, it's still a classic film. The problem with this, like I would say, go see it if you get a chance to see it. Problem is, I don't know if this is out on DVD in that format. I really don't. I only know that the Godfather trilogy and just the movie theater version, but I don't know if they ever did release the Godfather Saga or the Godfather drama made for television on that kind of form. I do know when I saw it, it was on AMC. And AMC had played it multiple times, and I actually recorded it on video cassette. Unfortunately, I lost that video cassette. Go figure. But I remember seeing it, and I remember loving it, and I remember talking about it with a lot of my neighbors who have seen it. I don't know if AMC is still doing that. I honestly can't say. It's been such a long time, and AMC and A&E, they've been pretty much doing original shows and less of the movies that they usually show. But other than that, mean they'll play it every now and then. It's just a matter of catching it and looking at a TV guide at what time and what place. Because I guarantee you, if it's on AMC, they're probably going to do it the same way that the local networks have done it. Break it up into 3 parts, or even break it up into 2 parts. I know I've seen it. It took me 2.5 days to finish it, and they was doing it as a marathon. So that's how long this movie is. And that's with the commercials, by the way. I'm sure it was shorter if they took out the commercials. But in any case, if you guys do see it on television, if you know that AMC is playing it, do yourself a favor for just to get a new feel for the Godfather trilogy, for the Godfather series. It's a trilogy because technically it is. But if you want to see the first 2 Godfather in that format, you will not be disappointed because you're really going to get a sense of closure of how these films was made when they added extra features. This is one of the films that I actually welcome with the extra features, and it really makes sense. I really do commend it, especially if you're a Godfather fanatic. If you love these films, you definitely will love the TV version, and that's very rare. I say that the TV version is just as much loved as the movie version, but believe me, they did a magnificent job, and that's because Francis Ford Coppola made sure that this was treated with the utmost respect. Well, that's pretty much it with this one. I will finish up the Godfather trilogy with Godfather Part 3, as well as some other films that are mob related. But until then, this is J77 saying, you guys take care.